Hi everyone. So let's get started with writing Apollo GraphQL server. So in the previous set of videos, we have already covered Apollo GraphQL server with some APIs, user APIs, and the MongoDB. So we will be just starting with that only. So we already have a base setup created, and what we are doing in this base setup is creating just a basic structure of our GraphQL queries and mutation. We'll keep adding and we will enhance it. Okay, so for now, what do we have in our package.json is the basic thing. We have GraphQL tools, we have Apollo GraphQL Express, Apollo server, and GraphQL. These dependencies are needed for your server, and if you are using MySQL, then you can use MySQL too. If you are using MongoDB, then you have to use Mongoose. All these modules, and node one is just to reload when the file changes. It is a kind of a watcher. So node mon index.js. Okay, so what our index.js is having simple express server, which we are bootstrapping with the help of http server dot listen on this particular port. Here we are using this particular middleware, and this Apollo server instance, what all it is accepting, there are a lot of things. If we just go into this and try to look into the Apollo server implementation, what all things it covers. Yes, so in the Apollo server, the instance of Apollo server we are getting from here. So Apollo server base, so this is the class, and what are the Apollo server express config, what all options it accepts, right? So all those things you can just look at here. All these things you will be passing. You can pass the resolver, schema, introspection, true, false, okay, extension, cache control, uploads, playground, gateway, all these things, all the arguments you can pass while creating the instance of Apollo GraphQL server. So coming back to our server, yeah, and what we are passing the introspection, type definition, which is a schema. Right now we don't have anything, and our resolvers. Resolvers will be the actual implementation of our queries. So in the schema definitions, we'll be writing queries, and in the resolver, they will have the actual interaction with the MongoDB, or using Sequelize with MySQL, or TypeORM with MySQL. Okay, and finally we are just adding this middleware on the Express instance, and we are running it. So what I did is I did nothing. I'm just trying to run this, and you can see our GraphQL server is running here. If you just try to open this, then you will get this kind of playground. Okay, currently we don't have any queries defined, so you can just see the documentation. If you try to see, it's kind of empty for the queries mutations, and this is the basic schema we have. Now what we will do is we will add the schema before that. So this is just a basic setup of GraphQL server which I wanted to do in this particular branch. Now what we will do is we will add a Sequelize CLI and Sequelize module dependency, and we will create a migration for some of the entities. So now we have the base setup. Before writing queries and migration, what we want is we wanted to have our database setup and how to connect with the database. We will be using sequelize.sync, sequelize.connect method to connect to the database. We will be having .env, where we can specify all the database details, something like this, db host, username, password, and we'll have some config where we will just specify all the database configuration. So we have to go on the path of Sequelize. So we will be getting started with Sequelize, how to introduce a Sequelize in your Nodejs application to connect to MySQL. That is the second thing. And then third thing is writing the entities, and then fourth thing is writing the queries and mutation. This is the path we are going to follow. So you can just look at this repository, which I already posted. This is the repository where you can look at for this particular code of this course. Okay, in the next video what we will do is we already have a MySQL, so I replaced already this MongoDB container with the MySQL container. Now when you do docker compose build and docker compose up, because I'm using the same docker compose file from the previous video, so I have two containers, Node.js container and DB container. So my MySQL host will be DB. Here I have a username, password, database root and all. volume mounting, and this is the port. So you will be able to connect. So I'm not installing MySQL on my local. We will be using Docker only. This is correct at present. Nobody is just installing all these tools on your local system like MongoDB server, MySQL server, and all. You can just spin up the containers and you can access it by creating a node container. So node container would be able to talk to our MySQL container on port 3306. This is the container port, and using DB host. So if you just see in the .env, we have provided DB host as a DB because DB is the container host. We can't write local host because container will be talking to container, and the container host for MySQL is a DB. Okay, so this is a basic setup. In the next video, let's introduce a Sequelize in our project.